very humbled in the company of two doctors.
Is that a medical doctor or is that a doctorate?
It's a doctorate in cancer research. I think about ADHD or autism. My degree began in genetics and molecular biology, and then I went into biochemistry and immunology and then cancer research. I looked at how people's genes manifest into diseases, and it has helped me in understanding the world and people, even in relationships.
I've never heard that be talked about ever in 23 years of working with
Wow.
ADHD, ever.
Does that surprise you?
In the community talks I give, this is where women say they had such severe postnatal depression and anxiety, but I think what it was is this postnatal isolation and trauma. Why my work has resonated with so many is because I went through it myself first. A lot of what I share I actually, had been through.
I'm fascinated by how you overcame some of those barriers to become recognised as so successful when so many women fear that their ADHD and or autism will suppress them having that opportunity.
Dr. Samantha Hiew, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
When I was talking to my wife, Leslie, about the fact we were filming today, she got so excited. She said, followed her on Instagram, read all that she puts out. And I think that female empowerment and how you've allowed a lot of women to feel seen and heard is a key part of why we're looking forward to speaking to you, as well as very humbled in the company of two doctors. Yeah. But take me to the diagnosis. You're 44 now. You were diagnosed at 40. I'd love to know the journey to that.
Such a long story. And there's always a story within a story. So I was diagnosed when I had my second child. And that was just before I turned 40, actually. But only started medication like 9 months later. But yeah, leading up to that, though, I have been on a zigzag trajectory throughout my life. And by then, I've already finished 3 levels of education and trying to find my place in the world of work and couldn't really find it. So I had a squiggly career, across 16 different industries, and eventually realized it was time for motherhood, and try to balance both motherhood with career, which was actually really difficult because I developed what I now know as postnatal anxiety and OCD after my daughter was born. And that made me stop, full-time employment because flexible working wasn't an option. So then, when my son arrived, I just thought, okay, well, I thought I got a hang of it, but I had the same postnatal anxiety, which was confusing because I thought I've done this before, I know what to do. But what was happening to me was the hormonal crash that happened after I gave birth was not something I could prepare for again. And that then, kind of brought on the seeking for answers, and trying to figure out what it is I was dealing with. Because straight after giving birth, I suddenly had more responsibilities. There was 2 children, which felt like 3. And that was then like, why couldn't I support both of them with very different needs at different ages? And that brought on more of the overwhelmed. And that's when I looked for the diagnosis. Started with ADHD, and 3 years later, I had an autism diagnosis.
So it
was
4 years later. Yeah, it took some time.
So you introduced by John as Dr. Samantha. Let's quickly just position that. So is that a medical doctor or is that a doctorate?
It's a doctorate in cancer research.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So that automatically sat here as a man who's made sure that women can get the treatment they need for ADHD through my career. You sit here as a woman with autism, a woman with ADHD. You've got a doctorate. You're very bright. You're very clever. That's now a matter of public record. Not every woman's had the chances that you've had or made them the chances you've had. And you stand for empowering women. Your platform, if you will, is empowering women just by what you write and how you write it. I'm fascinated by how you overcame some of those barriers to become recognised as so successful when so many women fear that their ADHD and or autism will suppress them having that opportunity. How did you get to be so recognised? Because it's brilliant what you've done. I'm championing positivity here. You are. How did you get there?
Wow. First of all, if you ask any ADHD women if they think they're successful, they would not say that they are, because what we deal with is the imposter syndrome half the time. So from what people look, at from the outside, it's the image of the swan, gracefully paddling on the surface. But then underneath all that is sort of rigorous, paddling, try to keep up, with that facade. And that was part of the problem, because even when I founded my company, I was trying to keep up with what people expected from me. And I wasn't really there yet. I was asked to give talks about ADHD when I was still learning it myself. I was just newly medicated, and then all of a sudden I was giving talks around the country about women with ADHD and supposedly being this figure that supports other people. But I really felt like what I learned and shared was so aligned with the timing of what women were looking for answers. And I think that was what they resonated with the most. It wasn't because I was, an expert as such, because every talk that I gave, women would say to me that, I feel like you're speaking with me rather than at me.
Relatable.
Yeah, but it was also because I was going through it. I wasn't speaking from a point where I'm higher than you, which is the hierarchical feeling, I suppose, if you're with someone who is more of an expert but doesn't have the lived experience. So I think why my work has resonated with so many is because I went through it myself first. A lot of what I shared, I actually, had been through,
Do you get an outpouring of people, particularly, obviously women, that relate and don't feel seen and heard? And in some ways, although you will not accept that successful element, which we will keep pushing to you, some validation that what you're saying needs to be said and spurs you on.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of women have said that sometimes they don't have a voice, and I guess it's an industry now. A lot of people who get diagnosed actually also work in it. and then, there are people who actually are newly looking for support, looking for answers.
So let's stick with the women's agenda if we can, because I think it would be an error if we moved away from that whilst we've got this opportunity to discuss women's health and ADHD with you. Clinically, one of the clinical issues for a middle-aged woman, and we talk about those that do the diagnosis, undertake the diagnosis, is separating out the menopause, perimenopause, the immediate hormonal issues that come for some women, a lot of women, on the run-up to and the leading out of having a baby, and how complex that is. And you've lived through that complexity. How was it with all of that going on at the same time for you? As a woman, I can't possibly ever empathise with that, and you can't either. So there's an opportunity to get on record your perspective of what it was like to be in the middle of that hormonal chaos. What was that like?
And then you layer on the caregiving.
Yeah.
And
still been needing to perform for young people.
And then having to take on the expectations from everyone, including your partner.
Yeah.
And that was my challenge, from everywhere, really. And very early on after giving birth, because I had to breastfeed my daughter, it was just something that was drilled into me that if I didn't do it, I'll be a failure.
Yeah.
And it didn't help that my mother-in-law was also a midwife. She used to be a midwife, so she had that breast is best. And so that gave so much pressure to me. And of course, my baby was born jaundice, and she didn't wake up a lot. She was sleeping a lot, so there was so much pressure. And I just remember there was an appointment where the social worker came, and then my mother-in-law was there, and everyone was handling me. They put a hand on me as though I'm not here.
Yeah.
And try to teach me how to feed my baby that relied on me completely. And because of that, I just thought, no, I'm really, really going to do this. And I'm going to just get everyone off me. I'm going to go into a room and I'm going to just bond with my baby, because the agency was taken from me. Mm-hmm. And it was the lack of autonomy that was very traumatic. And for a woman who doesn't really understand what's going on with your body, and you're not sleeping. And no one's really fully understand that part I think, was the part I never got over.
Yeah.
You know, and that was probably what led to my divorce years later. You know, that it was that postpartum hormonal dip that is so significant.
Yes.
And no one really put 2 and 2 together. We know that your hormones crash after giving birth. No one actually put 2 and 2 together with mental health, with actually still needing to perform a role where an entire human being is relying on you. I think if you can get through that, you can get through anything in life.
Right. Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
And your articulation there is beautiful. Thank you. I now can see why my wife Leslie thinks so highly of you, because she's going through the menopause and that relatability. So I know you had a question, but I just wanted to really make sure that was put in, because I think that I'm going to use that word, relatability, is key. You are talking about something that isn't talked about enough. And you talk about it in a way, again, that articulation that reaches so many people, and we can't empathize.
No.
But I have a wife that has gone through a journey where she's tried to talk to me and articulate in her own way. I don't know what it means and so on. But to hear that back, and then to know that other people benefit from your lived experience that clearly was really challenging, at the time. But to, like you just said, to come through it, to be a very resilient version of yourself. I hope you feel that.
Oh, yes.
Good,
I'm strong.
No, yeah.
But also you don't want to be strong.
And again, unbroken.
But you need to.
Yeah. Is there, just in context of the outpouring you must get from so many women, that's your lived experience, your journey. Is there any one thing that you want to amplify or share now that is an outpouring from that relatability where women need more help and struggle?
I think it's the huge difference between the time women enter perimenopause and after, because actually younger women, of course, the age that women are getting diagnosed now, age 23 to 49, make up the biggest groups, right? And the ones who are in the younger stages, we just have different physiology to the ones in, the older ages. And I'm there, I'm over the hill, over the age of 39 or 40, actually. For many neurodivergent women, I think the perimenopausal symptoms can start late 30s or even mid 30s if they're already in chronic stress. And your body just doesn't deal with stress that well, past that stage. And what's happening is that your nervous system is like your hormones are shifting like this, and then your nervous system also going up and down. And so this is the bit that perhaps people don't really fully understand when it comes to really diagnosing and supporting, because some days we may look completely fine, and then you get us on a bad day and we're just totally immobile, and paralyzed.
I want to take you back to something that, one of the things, I want to take back something you said. One of the things I get out of these conversations is we take the textbook, what it's like to be ADHD, what it's like to be a woman with ADHD, and the textbooks and the this, that, and the other would say this. But then in a conversation with somebody like yourself, something will just come out as a line that's heartfelt for you, that if we don't seize that opportunity to relate the textbook and the learning of academia into that real world, we miss a chance. And it happens every time we film. And you just talked about something that I've never related to before. And that is, there you are with ADHD, you are trying to breastfeed your baby, you've got anxiety because other people are placing pressures on you, you've got an inner chimp that's saying you're not good enough, but you want to be a good mum, so you've got an anxiety that's building, whilst your hormones are collapsing to the floor, everything's changing, you now know you're autistic as well, and then people are starting to touch you and invade your body to make things better for you and to make things well. And I wonder if we've ever been in a position to discuss the invasion of privacy for somebody and physical privacy for a woman with ADHD and all the anxieties, for someone who's autistic, who's got very big sensory challenges through autism, being touched by somebody whilst trying to do good, but not actually seeing that moment for what it is. We talk about don't hug an autistic person unless you have permission, but there's people really manhandling you with all of that going on. And I'll bet you in the manual of being a midwife, nowhere does it say, do you know the neurodivergent possibility of your patient, and do you know what to do with a woman that's got ADHD who's just had a baby, and do you not know what to do with a woman who's got autism who may not want you handling her whilst you're handling the baby, trying to get the baby locked onto the breast and stuff. I just bet that manual never even thinks about any of that stuff. And you've just brought that forward. I just think we'd be wrong not to amplify that, because that's huge, isn't it? In the 101 of being a midwife has got to start to look at these things in a different way.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, completely. I mean, it's in, all of women's health, and the fact that you think about a neurodivergent woman, getting to that point. So many of us may have already been cut off from what it feels like in our body. And then you take a woman who goes through pregnancy, in the women's health system, and people are dismissing her right, left, and center.
Yeah.
And the part that really got me, it wasn't so much that people were touching me. It was that my agency was taken away and I was treated like an object. Yeah. But really what was needed for my body to produce milk was the bonding, lovely connection that I would be able to get with my daughter in the dark room.
Yes.
Not with 3 people examining what is the best route of, suction here. That was just unthinkable.
We talked in previous conversations about the autistic person not liking going to the barbers or the hairdressers, going to the dentist, or indeed a person with ADHD and autism not enjoying cleaning their teeth because of the sensory thing. What we've never had the opportunity to do is relate it to a woman at birth in the immediate aftermath. And you've opened up a whole swathe of thought here that I think this program will bring to the fore is a woman with ADHD. Most of the conversation previously, and I fought against this conversation, is that women behave differently with ADHD. I don't actually believe they do. I just think men and women are fundamentally genetically different, although we wouldn't have men and women. And for every hyperactive chap, there's a hyperactive woman with ADHD. For every inattentive woman, there's an inattentive man. But when you get down to the concept of giving birth and the menopause and the perimenopause and what's going on hormonally, then we do have a difference between men and women.
Yeah.
And I've never heard that be talked about ever in 23 years of working with ADHD, ever.
Does that surprise you?
I hear it in the community, not so much during the process, but in the community talks I give, this is where women say they had such severe postnatal depression and anxiety, but I think what it was is this postnatal isolation and trauma, and they really need understanding. I think part of the problem is that you suddenly were propelled into this land where you're expected to do what other people can do. Yeah. But that's all fallacy and fantasy.
Absolutely.
It's
you're in a different starting position.
Happy to be put on so much responsibility, at that time.
And I'm imagining now, and I'm thinking now that, we've talked about people with ADHD having that anxiety about, I've got to get this right, and I've never got this right, and I don't understand why I can't get this right, all of that. I've never constructed that debate around a woman going into having a baby, where everybody expects it to happen. There's a Hollywood dream of having a baby, isn't there, where there's angels on clouds and beautiful music and out pops this perfect child, but actually it's nothing like that. But then going into that being neurodivergent with needs and autistic needs and ADHD needs, and that process, not understanding it, you may not be the standard fit here, and your emotions may already be in the wrong place, for want of an expression, as you go in that room. The expectation to perform when you've never known why you can't perform before, and then people judging you, or your fear of being judged as a woman by being neurodivergent, and even
such a sensitive time as well. I mean,
absolutely, it's not talked about by blokes, is it?
No. But what's key is why I asked Samantha is that it is talked about in her community.
Absolutely.
So the whole point of, we use that word already in this conversation, amplifying, raising awareness from this conversation, is to learn real time from you. Because I think when we were talking off camera, what can we learn from you? What are people talking to you about? What's your own experience? That, and then look how surprised you are, and then your brain's already going to how can you now try and solve that back into your world. So the marriage of the conversation is actually, there's a disconnect about how women have been made to feel, and yet it's not in any way being recognised.
There is clearly an unmet need that you're working on. But I guess when you're speaking to your community or communities, when you're going out there, you're speaking to people that want to listen to what you're saying. The stronger argument will come is when we can get that discussion to people who don't want to listen about that.
You're right, getting out of the echo chamber.
Yes,
So
the echo chamber.
What I've been working on.
Absolutely, and I think this is part of that. And I didn't see this coming. To this power, this is quite a significant thing we're capturing here, is taking your lived experience, your intelligent portrayal of that lived experience, to a market that's not ready for it, and making them listen, because it's not been thought about in that medical way before. And I think that's quite, I genuinely am quite moved. It's quite powerful.
We set out to have conversations that weren't just about capturing content, that was about how can we then all make a difference from removing the shames. Talked about a lot. The word disorder in ADHD, doesn't fit, doesn't feel right, but trying to identify a conversation through which we wouldn't have predicted.
The midwife's guide to an ADHD and autistic death. It's never been written.
Exactly.
And you are an author yourself, aren't you?
Yes.
You used the analogy of the swan.
Yes.
And I wondered if that was why you chose the name. For anyone watching listening, the name of your book is...
It's a tip of the ADHD iceberg. It's because I always see what is underneath the surface. That is how I see people. And there is a bit of that, how you're presenting. If I think about ADHD or autism, I look at what led you here, because my degree began in genetics and molecular biology, and then I went into biochemistry and immunology, and then cancer research. I looked at how people's genes manifest into diseases, and it has helped me in understanding the world and people, even in relationships. And that's how I see what is underneath that. And actually, when you say it's a midwife guide, right, to support neurodivergent women, I also think you need to extend to all hormonal stages. Because that is when we have challenges, beginning from puberty, pregnancy, after childbirth, postpartum, as we talked about, perimenopause and beyond. Because it is the moments when things have dropped a lot, the hormones have dropped a lot, or they are fluctuating like this, or it's just gone really low. That is when we have these mysterious symptoms that no one can really put two and two together, and they don't. So when we go and look for support, whether in psychiatry or in gynecology or in trauma and mental health services, which often befall women who are in hormonal, shifts, we get mislabeled, misdiagnosed, mistreated, and misunderstood. And it feels like without something to stand on as well, because it's as though your own experience isn't enough. And sometimes if you're up against someone who doesn't believe you, then you can easily be channeled down, the wrong route, and that's the end of the story.
There was an amazing lady I've worked with over the 20-odd years working in ADHD, Chris Dendy, who passed away a couple of years ago, sadly. And she was the original author of the ADHD iceberg. And I have her original picture in print form with her signature on it that she gave me 2 years ago. And she holds a conference every year in Alabama. And it's now held in her memory as part of her legacy. And she wrote about the iceberg, and she broke new ground when she started to capture that. And I think Chris was an amazing woman, one of the figureheads of my life. And I think if she's looking down on this, and her family will, I'll make sure her family and her sister look down on this episode, because the tip of the iceberg for a woman is a very different tip of the iceberg for a man. I still stand by women don't present differently to ADHD men. That women are distracted and men are hyperactive. That doesn't hold that argument. But there are times in a woman's journey through life when definitely we have to look at women differently for their ADHD. And I think perimenopause, puberty is huge, isn't it? And one of the points that's worth mentioning here is that when any person has that SPO, that anxiety, that those feelings, and I was talking to a young mum of a teenage girl the other day who's fearful that because she can't make friends and can't have relationships, that when an attentive boy comes along who's got intentions which are misplaced, that becomes the first, a real friend, he loves me. So vulnerable. A woman of that age with ADHD is very vulnerable. And we're not doing enough in sex education to actually separate out what it's like to be an ADHD young girl.
Yeah, and in girls' empowerment.
Yes.
So many women, even up to my age, has waited to be chosen and not asked themselves if you actually choose this too.
Yes. Yeah. And because of that, and we are not looking at that's an amazing form of words, and making sure the teenage girl with ADHD understands that she has choice. And agency is a word that I've noticed being used a lot more recently, and I think it's a very powerful word, isn't it? And that agency requirement is a higher requirement for a young woman with ADHD than a woman without ADHD. There's still an agency need, but I think where somebody's got heightened anxiety, borderline symptoms of depression, but not chemical depression, low self-esteem, we have to educate differently. I don't know if you do understand how powerful your words are. Your inner chimp needs to shrink, because you are, even me, 23 years in this field, you're making me think about the construct of how to take a woman through her journey of life with ADHD differently. And that's the stimulus of conversation, isn't it? It's very powerful.
Like the systems and services need to co-create
yes.
with women and girls.
Oh, it's all been done by blokes, hasn't it?
I don't know. That's like I came here late. But actually, you were talking about all the different areas where we can support, girls' empowerment and women's empowerment. And actually, the place where it would truly make a difference is inside our homes.
Yeah.
It's in the way we talk to girls as parents and as teachers, but mostly as parents. And that is even deeper, because in order for the parent to really see their daughter as who they are, they need to first stop projecting, from their past.
Yes.
But so many of us didn't have this education, on how to be parents. And some of our children do trigger us, from the way we've been parented. And so the messages that has been laid down on children, I'm speaking from my own experience as well, never allowed to be brilliant in my household, never allowed to be truthful. I'm always the first to apologize, because no one ever apologized to me. I had such crippling self-esteem, such a low self-esteem for so long. Yeah. And still probably do, and just trying to wake up and just be myself who I was meant to be, I guess.
There's a whole separate conversation there, all there.
You can't possibly have ADHD because you've got degrees and a PhD and what have you. Those words we hear from GPs and we hear from psychiatrists far too much. You have got ADHD, you have got autism, you're absolutely brilliant, and you have absolutely adding value to society in everything that you do. Don't ever stop and don't ever doubt yourself, because this is an amazingly strong interview, isn't it? A very strong meeting of minds. And you've given me food for thought, and I'm sure you will, the listening audience. It's amazing. What an amazing half an hour.